Hey, gang, thanks for joining me today. I'm Gord Wilson with Baja Life Realty, and today I am here to do an interview. And as most of you know, we moved our lives down to Mexico last year, and it is the best decision I ever made for sure. It's been absolutely amazing, and we are really living the dream here in La Paz, Baja California. But it wasn't absolutely simple, easy, and streamlined. We had to jump through some hoops with bureaucracy and administration and navigating the process of moving our residency to Mexico. And that's where this lady came in. We were encouraged to seek out and find Blanca Corral del Castillo, and she specializes in assisting folks who are trying to make the transition and become residents here in La Paz. So she really helped us out immeasurably, and I wanted to bring her on and talk to her today to help alleviate some of the concerns and fears some of you may have about making the jump yourselves. So without further ado, Blanca, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
And why don't you tell us just a general scope of how you would describe what it is that you do?
I help people to make your life a little bit easier in the transition to me moving to Mexico. Why? Because even if you know many things from your countries here, a little, well, like you say, there's a lot of bureaucracy and there is many paperwork that you have to do. That is a little bit different from what you do in the United States or Canada or any other country. So what I do is all general services like immigration, bank accounts, insurance, driver license, some issues with the municipal office, and I help to even change the bills on their units because it's a little bit difficult to do here. Now, since last year, we have the regulation that everybody needs to have a tax number, everybody that is resident or Mexican over 18 years old. So I help them with you too. Work permits, corporations, so all kind of paperwork. I'll help you.
So let's dig into the immigration process a little bit more. Could you tell us why someone might apply for temporary residency if they're planning on moving to Mexico rather than just like a vacationer's permit, which I think is good for up to 6 months?
No, it's not always automatic in 6 months.
Wow.
It depends of the custom whenever that you cross an immigration, depends on what you say, and they give you the time.
Okay.
Most of the time they give you 180, but it's the customs decision.
180 days. Okay.
Being resident, you can do more things in here. One of the things that some banks limit you to open bank accounts. Only one bank allows you to open bank account with insurance. The other thing is that if you are a resident, you are allowed to have Mexican driver license, Mexican car, also insurance, health insurance, car insurance. If you're going to be living here, probably it's good to think about that because what about if you are covered in your country, but most of the time you are here? So that's one of the reasons why it's good to become resident. It doesn't mean that you have certain kind of obligations here. If you're not working, you don't make any money, so there's no kind of like obligations, but you will have certain rights for to become resident.
And how do you apply for temporary residency?
You have to do it in your country through the Mexican consulate. So the main thing is to get the appointments there. It will be depending of the balances because of course you need to prove your incomes or your solvents in your country. They are the ones who take the decision of give you the temporary or permanent card.
Right.
It could be either of them. After 4 years being temporarily, you can become a permanent by right time. Also, there's a COVID program that's still running. We don't know when is that going to stop.
COVID, right.
That you can be doing everything in Mexico instead of be doing it through your country. This starts in summer 21, and we're still having almost 2 years with this program. You can have a temporary resident card if you have the conditions to apply. So it's possible at this time also to do it here in La Paz if you have the conditions. The normal process is through the consulate.
And I remember when you were coaching us when we were back in Canada, one of the hardest parts of that was just getting our appointment with the consulate. And so you really were great about encouraging us to start that process as soon as possible. And I remember you even pointed us to a website where we were given a list of all the different things we had to prepare in advance of that appointment. So it really certainly pays to be prepared and be organized before starting that process.
Usually I give to my clients a list of the things that they need to know, more or less what they need to take to the consulate. But at the end, the consulate can request you more things or less. But I can give you just a list of the things that more or less they will ask you for. The main thing is to get the appointment. I always tell to my clients that it's a little bit open about that because it depends on the consulate. They require you more or less things.
Hmm. Yeah, I've chatted to some of my American clients, and they sometimes even went to a different city because it was easier to get a quicker
Uh-huh.
appointment with a consulate. Coming from Western Canada, I know the Vancouver Mexican consulate was really backed up. It took Caitlin and I 2 months to get our appointment.
Also, it's different in the consulate about the amounts that they require you. I know that it's supposed to be the same, but it's not the same.
So, if you went the route of getting a temporary residency, how long is that good for? That's up to 4 years?
4 years. But the first time, whenever that you get the temporary visa approval in your country, you have 6 months, 180 days to come down and exchange it for the card. So you have to plan your trip before the 180 days.
Okay.
The first time that you enter to Mexico, you must do the process. You cannot come to Mexico and go back and do it later. So it has to be the first time that you enter to Mexico when you have to finish all the process. The process here in Mexico takes between 2 and 3 weeks, depends. And the first time, whenever that you get it temporarily, you can exchange it only for 1 year. After that, you have the decision to have it for 1, 2, or 3 years. And after the 4 years that be completed temporarily, you by right time you can go to permanent.
You can go to permanent.
Yes.
And is there a way that you could skip those 1, 2, or 4 years and go right to permanent
Yes,
residency?
there is some requirements. I will have to check the cases, but yes, depending of the requirements, if you have them, could be done before.
Okay. It's based on like your retirement status or how much money you have in the bank
It's
and
about
those
bank
kinds of
statements.
things.
It's
Right.
about bank statements more than that, but it's a few options to do.
Okay. What are some of the risks of applying for temporary or permanent residency without a person like you to help guide the process? What are some of the roadblocks or troubles people can run into?
Probably that can be taking more time, or the paperwork can be filled wrong, and you can be coming and going many times to the immigration or the places. So it's more about time.
It's
For me,
about convenience,
frustration and time.
frustration, and time. Okay.
Yeah, because even me, I hired someone to do my paperwork for my United States visa also.
You mentioned at the start of the interview that the requirements have changed for having an RFC. So, can you tell us a little bit about what is the RFC and who requires one, and what's the process like to get one?
Sure. The RFC is the tax number that we use in Mexico. But don't be afraid. It doesn't mean that you have to pay taxes because everybody's a little bit afraid about that. It's just kind of like a social security number that everybody needs to have, over 18 years old, Mexican or resident. Why you must to have it? For regulations is last year. The other reason why you need to have it is because some of the utility bills of the companies, they require you to have it in order to change it under your name. But it doesn't mean that they will put the services. Just that for changing under your name, you need it. It's a number that also you will be using whenever that you want to sell your property for capital gains. So that's another reason why you should have it. And also they are requesting it for buy new cars. So each time they are requesting for more and more process here, it doesn't mean that you have to pay any taxes if you don't do any work activities in Mexico. Work activities kind of like working like you, like real estate, or even rentals like Airbnb or something. That it's a work
Right.
activity because you make money in Mexico.
Yeah. Are there any other categories or situations that you would provide assistance with?
In municipal issues could be where property taxes, fideicomisos payments also, or fideicomisos changes. Sometimes you have to do changes to that.
Oh, bank accounts. Blanca helped us set up our bank accounts because we wanted one for my work purposes and then a second joint account for Caitlin and I to use for our operating expenses. And I can't tell you, setting up a bank account was so much more complicated and confusing for me than it was compared to what I was used to back home in Canada. So Blanca was really invaluable for that.
Thank you. I help with the bank accounts, but it's not only to open the bank accounts, it's the advice of which bank account is for you. Depends of the activity that you're going to be doing. How are you going to be using it? Which bank is better for you? Which bank has the better exchange rate? Which one charge you less fees for transfer money? So depends of your necessity is my advice. Also, I can help open corporations too. And whenever that I open the corporations, I help the clients from the beginning until then. So I help to do the corporations, bank accounts for the company, tax information, work permits for the partners. So I do everything from the beginning to the end.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's a subject which Brighton and I spoke about in a video interview that we did a couple of months ago. Because if an expat, if a foreigner is coming here to buy property, they basically have two options. They can go the route of the fideicomiso, or if they're buying a lot of property or a much larger property, sometimes another option is to establish a corporation.
Yes.
And so, what is required of a foreigner to establish a local corporation?
At the moment, for to have a corporation, you must to be resident. If you're a temporary resident, you need to have a work permit in order to do it. Whenever that you have a corporation, you also have obligations about taxes, about that you need to be doing your reports and everything. So it will be depending of the situation. My advice, if it's gonna be probably one property, it's gonna give you less headache to have a fideicomiso and pay an annual fee than all the obligations that you have with a corporation. But if we are talking that you're gonna be more like doing investments or buying a few properties, in that case, probably it's easier to do it through a corporation. Will be the case. Depending on the case is the advice or the option.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for us today. If I missed anything or if there's any questions you have, please leave it in a question below the video. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you're interested in using Blanca's services, and I encourage you to do so, I'm going to include all of her contact information in the description of the video down below. So scroll down and check that out. As always, tune in to www.Baja Life Realty, our company website, for lots and lots of great information on La Paz and how to live here. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share the video with all your friends. I'm Flash Gordon. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you very much for the interview and any question that you have.